Okay, so let's take a look at this one, see how you did. First thing, of course, is to figure out the days. We're going from July 2nd to October 27th. On the chart, July 2nd is day 183. July 2nd is actually the exact halfway point in most years, if it's not a leap year. October 27th, 300. So we subtract 300 minus 183 is 117 days. Then what? Perfect. So our principal is 3,950 times our rate 11.7 becomes 0.117. And then the days of 117 over 365 because it does say exact. So 3950 times 0.117 times 117 divided by 365 gives us $148.14. So, are we asked for the interest or are we asked for the maturity value? Maturity value. So we do have to add that on. 3950 plus 148.14 is going to give us $4,098, right? And 14 cents. How many of you had that right? How many of you have no clue where that came from? Okay, good. The next thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about making partial payments back on borrowed money like that. For example, let's say Tim borrows $9,800 at 7.1% for 90 days. On day 29, Tim pays $3,100. On day 63, he pays an additional $2,800. Find two things. Balance due at the end. Balance due at maturity is the term we want to use there. And total interest paid. So we have a timeline here. On a simple interest loan like this, interest is not figured in at all unless there's an action taken on the loan. Most of what we have done so far, the action has been paying it back at the end. So we've only figured out the interest once, which was at the end when we paid it back. Here, there are other payments made during the term of this loan. So the interest gets figured out and added in before any of those actions are taken at each point. What describes this is something called the U.S. rule. The U.S. rule does two things. One, and it says, as we've specified before, unless it's specified, you're assuming ordinary interest. The second thing the U.S. rule specifies is what I just said. Interest is calculated and added in before any action is taken on the loan. Or another way that it's sometimes put is interest is paid off first. So let's take a peek at this. Now this loan originated on day 0 for $9,800. After that, what is the next action on the loan? On day 29, and that action is a $3,100 payment. You paid $3,100. So we're at 7.1%. I'm going to bring that down here. So before that $3,100 payment can be made, we need to figure out the interest that has been built up. So it's the original principal, $9,800, times a rate. 7.1% is going to be 0.071. And day 29 means it's 29 days out of 360. So we're going to take 9,800 times 0.071 times 29 out of 360. $56.05 is the amount of interest. Now at this point, here's where the book and reality differed a little bit. What the book says is you're just going to subtract that interest off your payment. Bless you. You subtract that interest off your payment, then you apply your payment to the loan. And that gives you the same balance. That is fine. Technically what happens is that interest gets added to your balance before the payment is made. Before the action is taken, the interest is figured out and added to the balance. Either way you do it is just fine. You could either subtract the $56 from the $3,100 and then apply the remaining $3,043.95 to the loan. Or I prefer to just add the $56 to the balance. So the balance is now $9,856.05. That's my balance before the payment. And then I'm going to subtract the payment of $3,100. So the balance after the payment is $6,756.05. Any questions so far? That will be the new principal going on, yes. Now the next action on this loan is on day 63. Good. $2,800 payment. Now it is tempting to jump in and do interest equals, the principal is $6,756.05 now. 7.1% is 0.071. And it's really tempting to do 63 over 360. But that's wrong. Why? Why do we have to do that? Exactly. We've already paid interest on the first 29 days. So the amount of interest that's being really used here is 63 minus 29, or 34 days worth of interest is all that's being applied at this point. The first 29 days are paid. So this is technically 34 over 360. So 6,756.05. times 0.071 times 34 over 360 is $45.30 interest. Now, just like before, you can either subtract that from the $2,800 before you subtract it from your balance, or I prefer to just add it in, $45.30. So yeah, $6,801.35 is your balance before the payment. Then we'll subtract our payment of $2,800. $4,001.35 is the balance after the payment. Any questions? Well, so far I haven't answered any of the questions that have been posed yet. What were they? Perfect. Balance due at maturity and the total interest. Are there any other actions before the maturity? No. Day 63 is the last action. So now we're going to jump up to day 90, which is maturity. Or simply the end of the loan is the, we don't want to use the fancy term. So the first thing we need to figure out, just like the last time, is the number of days gone by. We're on day 90. Our last interest was figured out on day 63, which means we have 27 days that we still need to figure out the interest for. Our balance, our principal, is the balance left from the previous payment, $4,001.35. Times, our rate is still 0.071, times 27 days over 360. So 4001.35 times 0.071 times 27. It's 27 over 360. $21.31. What's that? Let's see. Double check. So fourth, you got 21.31? Okay. You said 7 instead of 7.1. So that is the interest. Now, of course, we need to add that on. Get $4,022.66 is the balance due at maturity, the balance due. Now, the other part, of course, is the total interest. We're going to add all those up. There were 3 of them. If we add them all up, it comes up to $122.66, I believe. You got the $21.31 here, $45.30 interest from that one, and the $56.05. What do you think?
22 was the maturity after going back.
That was the balance at maturity, yep. Total interest? I might want to double check. Okay.
Oh, that's why.
Okay. Punch the wrong number?
I forgot that. I put a plus instead of a decimal point.
Oh, that'll work. Okay, so let's say that Sam borrows $8,200 on May 18th at 6.8% simple interest. For 120 days. On June 15th, Sam pays $2,100 on, not one, but on July 21st, Sam pays $1,900. the same mistake. And on August 17th, pays $2,300. So same questions. Find the balance due at maturity and the total interest. Tell me where to start. Well, we'll start on May 18th, which was the origination of $8,200. So then you are right. The next one is June 15th. And what happens on June 15th? Payment of $2,100. So yes, we do need to find the days. June 18th is what day? May 18th. What is it? 138? June 15th is 166. We subtract, that gives us a difference of 28 days. So what do we do from there? Okay, so our principal is $8,200 times the 6.8% becomes a rate of 0.068. And it's 28 days over 360. So 8,200 times 0.068 times 28 over 360. $43.37 in interest. So I'm going to add that on. $8,243.37 is my balance before the payment. And then, so minus the $2,100 payment, $6,143.37 is the balance after the payment. Now we go to July 21st. What happens on July 21st? I made a payment of $1,900. July 21st is what, 202?
Yep.
So we're going to take 202 minus 166. It was 36, right? 36 days. So our interest is, what's our new principal? Perfect. $6,143.37 times still 0.068 times 36 over 360. So 6143.37 times 0.068 times 36 over 360. $41.77. So we're going to add that on, which is going to give us $6,185.14, correct? Our balance before the payment. I subtract the $1,900 payment. It is $4,285.14 is the balance after the payment. And then August 17th, paid $2,300. So August 17th is what, $229? So 229 minus 202 is 27 days. Then what? Perfect. Our principal is now the $4,285.14. Our rate is still 0.068 times 27 days over 360. 4285.14 times 0.068 times 27 over 360. 21.85, $21.85 is the interest. Adding that on gives us $4,306.99 is the balance before the payment. Subtracting the $2,300 payment gives us $2,006.99 is the balance after the payment. And then got the maturity, which is 120 days. We don't know what date it is, but we don't really care. We do need to know the number of days, but we have 120 minus 27 is 93, minus 36 is 57, minus 28 leaves us with 29 days, right? Sound right? So I'm going to go through it. We got 28, 36, and 27. 28, 26, 28, 36, 27. The 120, wasn't this a 120-day loan?
Oh, it was 91.
Yeah, 120-day loan. What is that?
91.
91, so that's 29 days left, right? That's what I thought. So there's 21 days left. Or not 21, 20. Not really, no. I mean, what you could do is you take 229 minus the 138 and get 91 there, and then you can subtract that. But it is, most likely, yes. So you got 29 days left. We're going to find our interest, which is our $2,006.99 principal. Our 0.068 rate yet. Make sure that's right. Yep. And times 29 over 360. $2,006.99 times 0.068 times 29 divided by 360. $10.99. So we're going to add the $10.99, which means this is $2,017.98 is the balance due. How much interest? $117.98 sounds right for me for the total interest. What do you think? What's that? 169? Well, let's check. This is like 11. 106? When you added them up? You must have missed the 1099.
Oh, yeah.
So how we doing? Good? It is. I'm going to give you guys a little bit simpler one to try on your own here quick. On December 3rd, Pete borrows $5,700 at 8.3% simple interest. For 90 days. On January 17th, Pete pays $3,000. Find the balance due at maturity. So I'm going to pause, let you guys figure that one. Let's give it a look. So, we start out, of course, on December 3rd with a balance of $5,700. Next action is January 17th, where we make a payment of $3,000. First step, we got to figure out the days. December 3rd is 3/37. January 17th, of course, is 17. So 365 minus 337 is 28. Plus 17 is 45 days. Any questions so far? Everybody doing okay so far?
I got the same number that I did.
Did you subtract? The other way you could do it is just subtract the two to get 320 and then take 365 minus 320 would work.
So I got 365 minus 337, which is 28 and plus 17.
Yep, that's what I did. I did 365 minus 337.
332.
No, that's 337, sorry. It's just my sloppy handwriting. Oh, sorry about that. That was my fault. So now our interest is our principal of 5,700 times 0.083, good, times 45 over 360, good.
So this is simple, automatically ordinary, and if it's ordinary, it's ordinary.
Yeah.
Difference
If it says exact, then it's exact interest. Yeah. It's always assumed ordinary unless it says exact. It'll be weird because in some of the exercises I should figure out the exact number of days. Well, the exact number of days could still be ordinary or exact interest. So the exact number of days is looking up the dates in the little chart and subtracting them to get the exact number of days, but that doesn't necessarily mean exact interest. So you gotta be a little careful with that. So anyway, 5,700 times 0.083 times 45 over 360, 5914. So 5914, $5,759.14. That's our balance before the payment. Subtracting our $3,000 gives us $2,759.14 is the balance after the payment. Of course, we're not done yet. This is a 90-day loan, so our next action is on day 90. We've used up 45, so 90 minus 45 is 45 more days. I try to be nice every now and then. I'm just not very good at it. So we have our new principal of 2759.14 times 083 times 45 over 360. So 2759.14 times 0.083 times 45 over 360. 2863. So we add that on. $2,787.77 is the balance due. How many of you had that? How many of you didn't have it but are pretty sure you could get it? How many of you want to leave crying right now? Okay, well. Just want to be done. We're close. We're really close. So, what we've been talking about so far, and what all of this is what we call interest-bearing notes. But in interest-bearing notes, there is something called a simple interest note or a simple interest-bearing note. That's what we've been talking about. You start out with a certain amount of money, a certain amount of principal. To that principal, you add interest. And you add that up to get the maturity value. So the maturity value is equal to an original amount of principal plus interest. Now the principal is something called the face value. A $3,000 note, you're borrowing $3,000. You're getting $3,000. You're paying back $3,000 plus interest to get a maturity value that's more than that. That's what we've been talking about. But there's something else out there called a simple discount note. The term discount means to take out an interest or a fee up front. So in a simple discount note, you have a principal. From that principal, you are going to subtract a discount to get what's called the proceeds. The discount is basically the interest. Well, it's not basically, it is the interest. The principal is still the face value. The problem is you don't receive the full face value. What you receive is the proceeds. Let's take a look at what I mean. So let's say we start out with a simple interest-bearing note. In a simple interest-bearing note, if you borrow $3,000 at 8% for 60 days. The amount of interest is 3,000 times 0.08 times 60 over 360. What's that come up to be? 40 bucks? Yeah, $40. So what that means is the maturity value, what you pay back, is $3,040.
not the same thing as this.
That's the same thing we've just been doing. Yes. That's the simple interest-bearing note. Now remember, the different one is the simple discount note. In a simple discount note, let's say you borrow $3,000 at 8% for 60 days. The amount of interest is $3,000 times 0.08 times 60 over 360, or 40 bucks. That looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? Except this isn't called interest, it's called a discount. So there's a $40 discount on this note. So what that means, you will not receive $3,000. It's a $3,000 note, you will not receive $3,000. What you will receive is something called the proceeds. The proceeds are the $3,000 principal or $3,000 face value minus $40. You're going to receive $2,960. That's what you're going to receive. How much do you think you're going to pay back? You pay back the face value, $3,000. So the difference is, in an interest-bearing note, a simple interest-bearing note, your face value is the amount of money you get. You find the interest and you add that to it to figure out what you pay back. In the simple discount note, the face value is how much you're going to end up paying back at the end. So you figure out the amount of interest, which is the same amount, and then you subtract that to figure out how much money you get up front.
So for that one, like you go and say you want 3,000, they're like I can give you 2,960.
Well, no, yeah. You say you need so much money. They'll say, okay, well, we're going to take this much of a discount out, so we're going to give you this much, and you have to pay back the full one.
So it's kind of like a fee.
Yeah, it's like a fee being taken out. What it is, generally, a simple discount note is a secured loan. Let's say that you have, I don't know, life insurance policy or inheritance or something that you know you're going to get it on a certain date. You know you're going to get that money in 6 months. So you go to the bank and say, hey, I am going to get the $3,000 in 6 months, but I need the money right now. So the bank's going to look at it and say, okay, we'll take your $3,000. When it comes in, we're going to take it. But obviously, we're not going to give you the full amount. We're going to take our interest out, our discount out. So we're only going to give you this much.
Either way, you're basically paying $40.
Either way, you're paying the same amount of interest. But effectively, the simple discount note has a higher interest rate because up here, you're paying $40 interest and you're getting $3,000. Down here, you're paying $40 interest, but you're only getting $2,960. So you're paying the same amount of interest, but technically on a little bit less money. We will talk about this more next week. We'll talk about what the effective rate is, because the effective rate here is not going to be 8% anymore because we don't receive the full amount. So it's going to be a slightly higher effective rate. So we'll talk about that next week. And we'll go into a process called discounting a note, which is kind of what we were talking about. Is if you know you have a certain amount of money coming in, you go to the bank and they'll take that money when it comes in, and then they'll do this discount to give you money. For now, there is a new homework assignment that is due next Tuesday. No quiz due this week. There won't be a quiz until next week, Wednesday.